The richest day in show jumping just got richer, and Swiss superstar Martin Fuchs stole a German sweep of the Spruce Meadows Masters event. Horse Bytes is presented by Caval, the equestrian edit. Horse Bytes has evolved, and now we're back with a streamlined version of our show, covering only the main events of our sport and bringing you all the highlights and action week after week. But we need your support and want your feedback. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share your thoughts across socials to help create the strongest show jumping community in the world. Your commitment to us means we can bring you the very best our sport has to offer. Subscribe, like, comment, and ring the notification bell to stay up to date with all things Horse Bytes. Welcome back to Horse Bytes, your go-to source for keeping up with the show jumping world. The Germans had a dominating week at the Masters, with the team winning the Nations Cup and Daniel Deusser and Richie Vogel each winning classes. Double D almost walked away with a win in the Grand Prix as well, but spectacularly pop-chipped the last jump in the jump-off and had to settle for third. With our sport's richest day in show jumping on Sunday and an eventful Nations Cup on Saturday, we saw some great sport this past weekend. Spruce is really hallowed ground in equestrian sport, and for good reason. Built in 1975 and run solely by the oil and energy tycoon Southern family from Calgary. They run a tight ship, albeit in the middle of nowhere, Western Canada. They call the shows tournaments because they actually view our sport as a sport, and the riders are treated like athletes. They have these required meetings at the beginning of each show where they proceed to basically berate everyone and essentially accuse them all of cheating before anything even starts, but a little fear-mongering only breeds a more competitive atmosphere that is welcomed by all in attendance. And if anyone remembers Eric Lamaze getting banned a few years for getting caught with drugs, only to be reinstated a few years later. Spruce is a different kind of show, and the Southerns make their own rules. The sponsors are treated with respect and prominence. You are required to physically salute like this when you enter the arena, and where prize-giving ceremonies last upwards of 30 to 40 minutes. But if you don't show up on horseback, even if it's snowing, you won't receive your prize. The Spruce Organizing Committee even charters a private cargo jet to ship all 66 European horses to the event free of charge to the athletes. The courses are always designed by Leopoldo Palacios, and he uses materials that range from ancient 16-foot logs to the famous bicycle skinny. And if you happen to lose a class by knocking a fence down, you get the honor of sawing it in half for all to see.
Well, as consolation, the tradition continued. She got to take the chainsaw to the Spruce Meadows plank, a costly rail.
The Grand Prix is spec'd at meter 60, and they literally tell you the night before that you should expect the biggest and hardest course you'll ever jump. And for those who over-prepare their horses, well, they're in for a rude awakening, especially with the long, heavy poles that can take a particularly hard rub. You need a keen and brave horse, not one that is backed off to jump at the Masters. Weather can play a huge factor. It can be like it was this year with temperatures hovering around 30 degrees. That's around 85 for those of you in North America. Or it can snow like it did a decade ago. You have tons of options to warm up, from a huge grass arena to a covered sand arena to a little patch of grass right up by the in-gate to jump a final vertical after the long walk up the hill from the schooling area. But no matter what the weather holds or the course looks like, walking under that clock tower into the International Arena, welcomed by that huge, enthusiastic, and educated Canadian crowd, is like nothing else in our sport. Truly, it feels important, and frankly, with millions on the line, it is. First up was the Nations Cup, where only 7 nations contested the 2-round course. Weather was beautiful but hot, which affected some horses' stamina, but overall it was met with German domination. They led from round 1 with one of only 3 double clears coming as the final rider in the arena. Jana Wargers sealed the deal for her country. She had to deliver the clear for the win, and boy did she deliver under the pressure.
Talk about a clutch performance under pressure.
My goodness, what an amazing piece of riding.
Last year's winners, Ireland, had to settle for second when anchor rider Cian O'Connor had a foot in the water in round 2 after an otherwise foot-perfect day.
Clean around for Michael Pender of Ireland in a fast time.
Mikey Pender jumped one of those other 3 double clears for Ireland, helping keep them on the podium, while the host nation, although producing that 3rd double clear for Tiffany Foster, had a less than ideal day. After Erin Ballard suffered a refusal at 11B after an awkward jump at 11A, she elected to retire and not even return for the 2nd round. So with Canada as a 3-woman team and at a huge disadvantage, there was no way they were ending up on the podium. France and Spain also had rough days, with Spain unable to make it into round 2, while Switzerland ended in the middle of the pack, despite its strong roster of all 3 Paris Olympians on the squad. Great Britain almost had a chance for the win with super solid performances from both Ben Mayer, who was clear in 4, and Tim Gredley on 1 time fault in each round. Had Tim not had those time faults, they actually could have finished as runner-ups ahead of Ireland. But as we all know, those pesky time faults in a Nations Cup will catch you every time. All in, Germany was the most solid all day and tackled the challenging but fair track with relative ease. Time was pretty liberal in my opinion, but with only 3 double clears, it was clearly accurate. And the first double was a bit in the shade alongside the table bank, which caused plenty of problems early on. But the late triple, which was oxer, vertical oxer to the ugly Canada planks, caused most of the trouble, especially in the heat and after 2 rounds of solid meter-60 jumping. Perhaps most shocking of all was the absence of Team USA, which in years past has even fielded more than 1 team in the Nations Cup. And the fact that there were only 7 teams total tells us that the Nations Cup at the Masters is likely losing its luster. It's not part of the LLN or any other team league, so the standalone Nations Cup is clearly not too important on anyone's radar anymore. That being said, this weekend was really all about the Grand Prix anyway, and boy, what a Grand Prix it was. Of course, the CPKC International presented by Rolex at the Masters is the crown jewel of the Rolex Grand Slam of show jumping, offering 3 million Canadian dollars, that's just over 2 million euros, for the Grand Prix alone. And it was announced that starting next year, it will have a total purse of 5 million Canadian dollars, making it by far the biggest payday in our sport. For those of you who aren't quite sure what the Grand Slam means, here's a quick rundown. It was established in 2013 as a quest to win the most difficult to obtain trophies in the world of equestrian sport, as deemed by Rolex, although I totally agree. It comprises 4 shows: Aachen, Den Bosch, Geneva, and Spruce Masters. The 4 Rolex Grand Prix alone endowed with prize money totaling over 5 million euros, soon to be 7, plus the bonus system. Whoever wins 3 shows in a row receives 1 million euros in addition to the prize money. If the rider then continues his or her success story by also winning a 4th major, he or she receives an additional bonus of 1 million euros, so 2 million total. Whoever wins 2 shows in a row receives a bonus of 500,000 euros. It is always the rider who counts, so winning the bonus is also possible on different horses. This system has no endpoint, so it is detached from the calendar year. It's a never-ending story. Scott Brash was the first and only winner of the Rolex Grand Slam so far, back in 2015 with Hello Sanctos, where he won 3 in a row. No one has yet to win all 4 in succession. Coming into this weekend, Andre Time and DSP Shakaria were the Grand Slam live contenders after winning Aachen back in early July.
Andre Time for Germany, he does it! 39 points.
But after a discombobulated jump at number 8 caused a fault at the skinny and a stretch at 11B caused another fault, the pair finished on 8 faults and put them immediately out of the running of the Grand Slam.
He wasn't able to get back.
Overall, we saw only 5 clear rounds in the first round, 3 one-time faulters, and 4 fall faulters who made it into round 2. Unlike the Nations Cup that saw the triple late, the Grand Prix saw the triple come early at 5 ABC, where a huge chunk of the class actually rubbed C, but it never fell even once. The time allowed in round 1 was quite tight, catching more than a few out, which is surprising given the fact that those round 1 times not only matter for making it into round 2, but also for final placings, so you would think people would put quicker rounds in general. But I suppose clearing the giant fences is slightly more top of mind while galloping around the course. The water jump only caught out Dennis Lynch and Matt Sampson, who honestly made a hell of an effort to get over it when his horse tried to run out a couple of strides before. With the sweltering heat and high altitude, stamina was certainly a big test as well, especially for those number of horses who jumped 2 Nations Cup rounds on Saturday and the Grand Prix on Sunday. In fact, all 3 double clears from the Nations Cup faltered in the Grand Prix, unable to withstand the incredibly demanding weekend. I will say, however, that now that the class is spec'd again at meter 60, it was 170 when I jumped it, the overall effort seems slightly less diabolical than it used to be, although Leopoldo Palacios somehow always manages to get it exactly right, with around 2 or 3 usually making it into the jump-off. Perhaps the most shocking moments of the day came from America's McLean Ward and Britain's Scott Brash. McLean was uncharacteristically ejected at fence number 1 after his horse mistakenly judged the takeoff point incorrectly and left an entire stride early to crash through the fence and cause McLean to fall off. Luckily, no one was injured, but just as the commentator was saying the crowd would be sure to gasp, assuming the horse would jump high over number 1, they absolutely did from the unexpected outcome. And we saw a pilot error from Brash, who turned back to the triple bar after having had the skinny down and went to move up, but couldn't get the horse to follow and quickly changed his mind and pulled out so as not to crash. Something we rarely see at this level, but hey, goes to show everyone makes mistakes, even those with recent gold medals. Like Steve Gerda says, our sport is about adapting, and sometimes you adapt too late and things just don't work out. But then it was on to round 2, where 12 came back to challenge the shortened track. We saw 3 doubles, a vertical one stride off of a long 4 under the shadows, an oxer vertical 1 stride over the famed chokingly tight double Liverpools to an even more choking 3 stride to a wall of planks, and finally the double of oxers down the last line. It was a test of scope and rideability, but with such a strong field in round 2, I thought it actually jumped quite well. In fact, the first riders in both rounds were pathfinders, showing us that a clear was possible. A statistical norm in our sport, for those curious if that's common. And we saw incredible sportsmanship when teammate Steve Gerda gave Martin Fuchs some pointers as they passed each other near the entrance, perhaps leading to Martin's eventual repeat victory. With emotions running high, we even saw utter disappointment and frustration as Yuri Manser slammed his thigh after having one down in round 2. The entire stadium was electric as Martin, Dara, and Deusser entered for the deciding jump-off. Martin went first, but with an early fault at number 4 as he came in too quick and on an angle, Leone ticked the front pole behind. Martin put the pedal to the metal, but to put the pressure on for those to follow. With one down, he was almost sure he'd given it away. But after Dara faulted at the same jump and was significantly slower, actually incurring 2 time faults, it was up to Double D to bring it home. With a super slick start from 1 to 2, making it over the oxer in the shadows, and a smooth, quick line around the top of the arena,
He'll be the winner. German victory into the Liverpools. Oh, now comes down to
he had A of the double Liverpools and now had to run to be quicker than Martin. He had the time well in hand, but of course, as a rider, you don't really know how quick you are in comparison to your opponents, so you have to leave it all out on the field and take every risk, especially with $3 million on the line. But with a long gallop to the last, Deusser tried to leave one out, but was way too far away and pop-chipped to the crash through the last wall and finish on 8 penalties, an eventual 3rd place on the podium. It was a nail-biter right till the last moment and gave us incredible sport for one of the best classes we get to watch all season long. We didn't get to see any triple clears this year, but the Rolex Grand Slam of show jumping looks towards its next leg in Geneva in December. Martin Fuchs may not have gotten his iconic shot from last year pointing to his assured win, but he took the repeat victory and over $742,000 in prize money nonetheless. The Germans had a tremendous week overall. The Americans barely showed up. Martin Fuchs continued his epic run of recent 5-star victories, making good on his 9% win chance coming into the competition, taking the back-to-back victory. And Spruce Meadows showed us why their commitment to our sport is unparalleled by upping the ante by another $2 million. Well, that's a wrap on this week's top highlights, and stay tuned next week for a rundown from the first North American League World Cup qualifier of the season out of Traverse City, Michigan. But before you go, check out our most memorable moments from Spruce Meadows over the years. Stay tuned to all of our socials. Make sure to subscribe and follow along all the action as it unfolds here on Horse Bytes, your go-to source for keeping up with the show jumping world.